Good evening. It's 5:30, and I like to be punctual as much as we can. Save some time maybe later on for some questions. I'm George Seafried. I'm the current president of the Elk-Skegemog Lakes Association. Welcome you here tonight or this afternoon or early evening. Join us for, I think, a very informative and eye-opening presentation by Ron Reimink, who is going to be speaking to us about the swimmer's itch and the problems that have occurred in the past and methodologies in the past for curing the problem, or hopefully curing the problem and then going forward. But tonight I'd like to talk to you about just a couple of quick things. Two main things that are always on our list as board members is we're interested in getting volunteers. And so we try to always put that word out, that volunteering is a way of showing that you're a supporter, that you believe in some of the programs that we are going forward with, some of the testing that we're doing, those kinds of things. So it's important to have the work that we try to do as a board, and with the limited number of volunteers that we have now, have more volunteers. So it's as easy and as simple as maybe an hour or two a month for a few months out of the year. It just depends on what your talents are. So besides always asking you to share your talents financially with us, we'd like you to share some of your other talents. And I've put some forms up here on the table if you're interested in looking at the opportunities. But just real quick, things like water safety. I didn't know I brought some audio visual with me. It's okay, I know her. I should have expected that. Things like water safety, water quality sampling that we do. We do some stream monitoring, and just so happens that next week on Tuesday, we're doing some, or the tip of the mitt, one of our partners, they're doing some volunteer training for doing stream monitoring. And so those are the kinds of opportunities. If you have photographs, if you enjoy taking pictures, if you work with Photoshop, if you're a writer, an illustrator, an artist, those are the kinds of things we could use some talent for. We don't all, even though we're pretty egotistical and we think we can do everything, we can't. It depends on volunteers. So please, if you're available and you'd like to volunteer a little bit, it doesn't have to be a big time commitment, we'd appreciate it. The other thing that's important to us is how we operate and our financial situation. And luckily we're in a pretty strong financial situation, but our membership numbers have really fallen off this year. You've probably read about it in the emails that you received. You've probably heard a little bit about it maybe tonight if you've talked to one of our board members. But we just keep trying to encourage people to re-up their membership. You might know that there's a note on our email blast that we usually send out. You can just click and leave us a message and we will check if your membership is current. We have an awful lot of folks that think their membership is up to date, but it's not. So we need those funds coming in. I'll give you an example of why that's so important. I don't like to use other lake associations, and I don't think it's good to, say we're not doing so bad because this other place over here is not doing as well. But the things that we do as far as water testing, sending the samples out to be tested and the cost of doing all that kind of thing. We do lake monitoring, we do shoreline monitoring. We come out and we consult with owners, whether they are members or not, whether they're concerned about some erosion, a plant, something they see in their water. We try to do that because we're concerned about all of the water, not just what's right in front of me, where I live. But unfortunately, there's some lake associations that aren't in as good a position as we are. And I'll give you an example. Lake Leelanau Lakes Association, LLLA, they for several years have been fighting Eurasian water milfoil. Now, our lake biologists, Sam and Michael, I was going to say her assistant, but that's not accurate, is it, Michael?
That's probably correct.
They go out and are monitoring what goes on around our lake. They're in kayaks, they're on boats, they are walking. And they'll get calls from property owners, come on out and take a look at something. But this Eurasian water milfoil is an invasive species that unfortunately is taking over a lot of our lakes up here in northern Michigan. Unfortunately, both Crystal Lake and the Lake Leelanau Association have had unbelievably difficult years. And so I'm going to read this to you, which is very brief, but it comes from their newsletter and from their treasurer's report. It'll give you some idea of the magnitude of money that is involved in trying to keep up with some of these Eurasian or some of these invasive species when they get out of control. We're trying to get to these things as soon as we spot them, we try to treat them. And we don't charge any individual property owner when we find it for treating them. We just go ahead and do it because you know what? Whether it's occurring a mile away from me or right in front of me, it's going to affect all of us at some time if we don't keep it under control. So the Crystal Lake Association, in their 2023 newsletter, they stated that in early 2023, in spring, they found and treated 13 acres of Eurasian water milfoil. Sam, do we have anything we would measure in using the unit of measure of an acre?
No.
Square feet, right?
Yes.
Okay. 13 acres. That was in the spring. Later on, they say in their newsletter, early in the summer, they went ahead and found 9 additional acres of Eurasian water milfoil. Now, unfortunately, Lake Leelanau is an even tougher situation. They have, well, there's two quotes I wanted to share with you. They're working with the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, and they've joined a partnership, which is great. But they're both working together to handle this Eurasian water milfoil. There are other species that are problems for us here in these lakes, but they're really battling this Eurasian water milfoil. But they go on here to say that had we discovered Eurasian water milfoil before several acres spread through Lake Leelanau, we could have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. They use a benthic barrier, which is basically very simplified, put down like a canvas sheet, if you will, that tries to smother the plants. They don't use chemicals. And we try not to use chemicals, and we're hopefully going to handle some things in the bayou next year, right, with the benthic barrier. The Treasurer's report for 2022 states that they spent $235,000 in 2022. And then in 2023, they state that they spent $335,000. That's 3 times the budget of our lake association. So, I mean, these invasive. That's why we have the boat washes. That's why we ask when we have these boat washes, which again, we could use volunteers for. We don't actually go out and personally wash the boats, but we're there to talk to the people who have their boats on their trailers and try to help them understand why it's important to clean anything off of their boat, out of their bilges. So that's why these things are important. We don't want these kind of invasive species to spread all over our lakes. None of us will be happy. So remember, we're trying to protect and preserve. And the only way we can do that is if we monitor what's going on, both chemically in the water, what's our temperatures, what's our clarity, what's our dissolved oxygen, and what kind of invasive species do we have along our shoreline. So please support us. If you're already a member, we'd appreciate an additional donation. If you're a member at a certain level, please consider when you renew upping your membership amount. The monies that come in are spent on very important projects, and we want to hear from you. If you see something that's happening around your lake, around your area of the lake or the river, wherever you might live, even if you're not on the shore, if you see something, call us. That's why we're here. Our number, our emails are in the emails that you get, and we'll react to what you tell us. So, enough of that. Tonight, I'm going to have Bob Campbell, last year and the year before and the year before that, our president. He's going to introduce Ron.
How many people are here tonight, at least in part because you've had an incident? And oh my goodness, I have heard, anecdotally from lots of folks, Bill and Jim and Carol Getz, who are here tonight, their grandchildren, and lots of others of you too. It's not been a good summer, but Ron Reimink is going to tell you how to avoid that in the future. How many of you just talking about this are feeling a little bit itchy? That's good. That's good. I first met Ron Reimink about, I don't know, Ron, 5 years ago, when we were trying to deal with the issue of swimmer's itch. And Ron was coming off, the first time we talked to him, a period where a number of people thought, yeah, it's only the mergansers. If we just take care of the mergansers, we'll be in good shape. But Ron's background is as a scientist. He was a science teacher at Hudsonville High School, and he's been retired for a number of years. He has his main home is down in the Hudsonville or Holland area, but he has a place on Lime Lake, and he has grandchildren, like a lot of us. And he wanted to make sure that they could swim and play itch-free with their parents too, and maybe with the grandparents, like all of us here. And Ron could have probably pushed the envelope and made more money with what, for a couple years, seems to be the popular thing to do, which was to blame it all on mergansers and send boats out with some traps and contraptions. Samantha and I were out one day and we just had a ball catching a merganser mama and 4 or 5 little merganserlings on the south end of Elk Lake. But then you got to look at what makes sense. And Ron, I give him all the credit in the world. And he worked with some top researchers at the University of Alberta. And they came to a number of conclusions. And he was under contract to us for a couple of years. And we did a lot of sampling here. It's not just the mergansers. Geese, mallards, other those aquatic bird critters, and that's why I am really impressed by this. The title of his presentation: "Protect and Preserve and Swim Itch Free," and that our most important thing for us is protect and preserve. And he's going to tell you how to do both, how to swim itch-free and protect and preserve. I will follow up a little bit on what was said about Lake Leelanau too, because Ron can't find enough things to do in retirement. He's also the lake biologist for Lake Leelanau and is, again, pursuing a strategy to control Eurasian water milfoil that is reliant on not using chemicals, but using these mats that Samantha is going to use in the Torch River Bayou next summer. So, enough of me, Ron.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thanks for all of you for coming tonight. And I think thanks to Samantha for inviting me away last February. She got a hold of me and said, "Hey, would you do this?" And it sounded like a pretty good idea at the time. But a little secret, and maybe maybe it's not so much a secret for you guys, but you have one of the best young lake biologists in the whole region. So she's awesome, and when she asked me, I couldn't say no. And so here we are. I'm going to speak to you tonight. I am the lake biologist. As of this is my second year, finishing my second year at Lake Leelanau, and I wish I could tell you, I wish I had the whole evening to tell you like, some of the exciting things we're doing there with the Eurasian water milfoil. Expensive, yes, but working with the tribe, non-chemical, and today, if you were to say, take me out in the lake and show me some Eurasian water milfoil, we wouldn't be able to show you any, not even one strand. And now that doesn't mean it's gone, it just means it's gone right now. And so we're using a technique that actually kills it, but I'm not here to talk about that. So anyway, I want to talk to you about swimmer's itch, something that I started, Bob asked me this on the phone, and I started working on swimmer's itch, the parasites that cause swimmer's itch back in 1983. And I was a teacher at Hudsonville High School. A young man back there used to work out with me in the mornings before school, lifting weights, playing basketball and with a bunch of old guys. And then I'd go to teach right in the same building. But in the summertime, I would go up into the beautiful Northwest Michigan and work on swimmer's itch research. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But and I will share with you ways that you can actually have you and your grandkids or kids be able to go in the water and swim and not worry about it, which is what we do on Lime Lake. So Lime Lake, I was telling my wife, she says, where are we going? And I'm like, well, we're going to go way over here, but if that peninsula wasn't there, we'd be right over there in Leelanau County, Lime Lake. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So here we go. I love, if you look on the websites of just about every lake up here, you're going to find something to do with protect and preserve. That's what we want. We want what we have. We want our kids and our grandkids to have that same thing, and we want to protect and preserve. But we also want them to not get swimmer's itch and say, "I'm never coming back here again." We want that. We want them to enjoy it. We want them to long to come up and see us. And so I think we can do both with some education. So just so that we're all on the same page, I'll very quickly, the adult worms live in waterfowl. They actually are male and female. They mate. They're in the bloodstream surrounding the large intestine. So they lay their eggs, the female, into the feces, and then the duck or goose or swan poops into the water. And then the eggs are fully embryonated, and this little larva, you can't see it with a naked eye, comes out and goes right to the bottom and looks to find a snail. And then it penetrates the soft foot of the snail, gets in the snail, and about 30 days later, every day for the rest of the summer, out come these fork-tail cercari, these larvae, come out about 2,000 to 3,000 a day every morning for every infected snail. And so what they do is as soon as they come out, and they come out in the morning, right away in the morning. So right like in the middle of summer, it's 5:30 in the morning, it's getting light, that's when they're coming out. And they're going, they're 1/50 of an inch long, they're transparent, so you're not going to look in the water and see them. If you had a whole bunch of them in some water and you held it up to the light, you'd be able to see them twinkle. But what they do is they come out of the snail and they go right to the surface because they want to hang there and wait for a duck or a goose or something to come along. And then they attach, they get in the bloodstream, they migrate to the large intestine, they grow and mate, and the life cycle continues. So it's a wonderful life cycle, a bit complex maybe, but swimmer's itch is where when we are in the water and our skin is enough like a waterfowl's skin where these larvae will attach, and it takes about 90 seconds. They have a ventral sucker, so on the bottom side they have a little thing that they can kind of suck on and attach to your skin. And then it takes about 90 seconds for them to inject a little bit of enzyme to get through the skin. and then they get just below your epidermis, and then they die because we're the wrong host and we have white blood cells that will attack them. But then the residue is left, and then our body, for some of us, not all of us, but some of us, about 40% only. A lot of you raised your hands, but in the general population, there's about 40% of the people react to that. And your body produces histamines, and then that causes a papule, and it's red and it itches. You can take antihistamines to try to get, to knock it down a little bit, the itching. But that's really what swimmer's itch is. We're getting in the way of their life cycle. So, well, it was discovered, by the way, it was discovered in 1928 in Michigan at Douglas Lake at the University of Michigan's biological station. That's when Court, his last name, Wilbur Court discovered this life cycle. And so what did they decide to do back then in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and into the 70s and even into the early 80s? Let's kill all the snails. Now this is before the field of ecology. Ecology is how everything fits together, how one thing impacts another thing. This is well before the age of ecology. And so yeah, let's just kill all the snails. And of course we know now that that's not very smart, because snails do a wonderful service for the ecology of the lake, eating all the algae off the bottom and so on and so forth. And so snails are very important. But that's what we did. We would just put copper sulfate in the water, and very toxic. And all of that copper, by the way, stays in the lake. It precipitates out as copper carbonate, and it's there. If you put a pound of copper in your lake, it's still there. The copper is still there. Reasons not to do that. I'll go quickly through this because we're not doing this anymore. Number one, it's not permitted for swimmers' itch treatment in Michigan anymore. So 2018, they said no more. And that was due because of the work that we did. We did a study. I'll show you, maybe I won't show you that. We did a study to show that it really wasn't effective. The larvae that come to the surface will drift. And so you could kill all the snails in this stretch, but then stream it down the lake a little bit, you're going to get swimmer's itch. So it really doesn't do that. It kills most everything, which is really sad, including invertebrates, snails, crayfish, insects like mayflies, algae, plants. And all of this, you have to understand, less than 1% of all your snails in the lake, in Elk-Skegemog, are infected with the parasites that cause swimmer's itch. So we're basically dropping the atomic bomb to kill just a few of the things that are causing the problem, right? So ecologically, not a good idea. The copper persists, I talked about that. And here we go. It has been scientifically proven ineffective. We did a study and published it with peer review on Lake Illinois, actually, South Lake Illinois. We did this study to show that it really kills the snails, so we showed that, but it doesn't do much for the swimmer's itch larvae. So then, and I have to tell you that I came on board in 83, and this is, I can blame for this. We said, well, how about this? How about we get rid of the waterfowl? Because if you can break the life cycle, then you won't have the swimmer's itch. And again, this was in the early 80s. Ecology came in about 60s and 70s, the field of ecology. And so, we still weren't thinking ecologically. We were like, well, let's get rid of the waterfowl on the lake. And maybe that would do it. The summer resident waterfowl. And maybe that would do it. Well, we are now realizing that it removes important larvae from the ecosystem. And you say, well, wait a minute, these are parasites. Who cares about the parasites? We should all care about the parasites because they act very much like mosquitoes in the terrestrial system. You say, well, let's kill all the mosquitoes. I don't like mosquitoes, except mosquitoes are very important for the functioning of the ecosystem, the terrestrial ecosystem. So that's, this is I just quickly got a few of the most current research that's showing how important these things are. Parasite infectious stages, that would be these larvae, provide essential fatty acids and lipid-rich resources to freshwater consumers. Trematode, which these parasites are trematodes, parasites exceed aquatic insect biomass in Oregon and so if you take all the insects in Elk-Skegemog and weigh them, all the larval aquatic insects, and then you weighed all of the larvae coming out of the snails are going to have, it's going to weigh more. That's a lot of biomass. Production of marine trematode cercaria, a potentially overlooked path of energy flow. So we're just starting to realize how important these parasites are. Biomass and productivity. On this study, they showed that in a little 400-acre lake, I know yours is much bigger than that, but a 400-acre lake, they had like 3 tons of these, in one summer, 3 tons of these little parasites that cause swimmer's itch that came out of the snails, 3 tons. So that's like taking a huge biomass away from your ecosystem. Which, if you think about it, what do those things do? Well, the zooplankton eat them, then the minnows eat the zooplankton, and the perch eat and then the walleye eat and so if you take all of those insects out, or those parasites out, you're probably negatively impacting your fishing. And so you say, wait a minute, okay, let's start to think about this ecologically. Here's another one, trematode cercaria as prey for zooplankton and so on and so forth. You get the idea. It decreases biodiversity, both vertebrate and invertebrate. And Sam would tell you this, biodiversity is a really, really good thing. If the more things you have, and by the way, Elk-Skegemog, you guys are in really good shape. You have a lot of biodiversity. You have more than one species causing swimmer's itch. And that's really a good thing. So we have to change our thinking. Say, wait a second, what did you just say? Yeah, you have more than one species causing swimmer's itch. That's a good thing. And whoa, wait a minute, I'm not buying into that. Yeah, it really is a good thing. You have a healthy ecosystem going on in Elk-Skegemog. And I know Sam and Michael, they're working hard to keep it that way because that's what we should be doing in all of our lakes. And so biodiversity just means that the concept is that the more different things there are, if something comes along and kills one of them off, the whole ecosystem doesn't crash. And so that's really important. It has been scientifically proven, and you were part of this, by the way, ineffective for, to remove the waterfowl. We did a study and showed that, you can remove all the summer resident ducks and geese, but the ones that come in the fall, they're just starting now, the geese are flying around, and in the spring, those things are continuing the life cycle of these parasites. And so it really doesn't make a lot of sense to spend money to remove those waterfowl when you're not having a huge impact. So this is data from your lake. As Bob said, we were involved for a couple of years doing some studies here. And it doesn't matter, you just have to look at the colors here. And my pointer doesn't work for whatever reason. It works here, but it doesn't work on there. But if you look over on the red, the darker the red, the more worms there are. And the dates are, so there's all of July, 4 weeks in July. And by the way, this was 1 year after you guys decided to trap mergansers the one summer that you tried. Well, let's try it. And then, according to the theory, then the next year shouldn't have the swimmer's itch. It should be gone. And what we showed, because all of this is made possible because of new technologies. You have to understand that. Since 1983, every summer had question after question, and we couldn't answer them because we didn't have the technology. And now we have the technology to where we can take a water sample and we can tell you so many things. We can tell you what worms you have, how many worms you have, what species of worms you have. It's absolutely phenomenal. And that technology has allowed us then to answer these kinds of questions. So this column right here, the first red column is the one from the merganser. So these are different species. The second one is a novel species, And what do you mean novel species? It's a new species of parasite that causes swimmer's itch that we discovered. It goes through Canada geese. The third that doesn't have much for you guys, it doesn't have anything actually. That one is it goes through mallards. So okay, during that year you didn't have much. And if you take a look, this is 1 year after you had removed all your mergansers, and notice all the orange in this column. This is a different date, this is a different date, and that's a different date. And you say, wow, there's still a lot of worms. And those are, to be that color, you have to be over 100 worms per water sample, which is about a 5-gallon bucket. So about a 5-gallon bucket's worth of water, you got over 100 of the things that each one would cause a papule, swimmer's itch, right? Well, then you take a look at the novel species, the one that goes through Canada geese, and that one is even more alarming. I mean, as far as your lake. So at this stage, you have more of that species than you have of the merganser one. So that was some research that we did that showed some really interesting results. We published that. So you weren't actually part of this study. If you want to look any of this up, I know Michael's recording this, so you could go back and read some of this, but not that you would. It's pretty heavy reading, but this was the new species that we found. We haven't named it yet because we haven't got the adult worms from the Canada goose. We know what the larvae are, but just to give you an idea, just 3 common waterfowl species, common snails that are found in our area here, and those are all the species of parasite that cause swimmer's itch on the right. So it's pretty complex. And you know, to better fulfill all of our mission, preserve, protect, it just makes sense to leave nature be and go a different route as far as tackling swimmer's itch. So I would suggest that we, and I do this personally, as Bob said, got a couple of granddaughters, 5 and 7. My daughter is a teacher, high school biology teacher, and she actually and her husband come up and they spend the whole summer with us. And my granddaughters swim every day in Lime Lake. We have 4 species of parasite that cause swimmer's itch, and they get it. They're susceptible, and so if it's there, they'll get swimmer's itch. But how about we take a look at ways to prevent it? So I'm going to go through this real quickly. There's some advantages to this shift. Number 1, there's no ecological damage, right? We're going to leave nature. We're going to preserve, protect, conserve. You have total control. Because we always worry when you're trapping ducks and trying to get rid of the waterfowl, or when we're back killing the snails, is it a good day or is it a bad day for swimmer's itch? You always wonder, should it swim or not? And we don't even have to wonder about that anymore. It's total control of you if you're going to take the route of let's just prevent this. There's little cost of any to the lake associations. That's a wonderful thing because as George was saying, you know what, money, it's hard to get the money and we want to spend it on invasive species, early detection. There's just a lot of things attacking our lake. It's instant protection. For what you're going to learn, or you might be learning tonight, you could go back and tomorrow you could prevent what's going on. Only those that are susceptible need to worry about this. It works against all species. So who cares about all the complexity of the swimmer's itch parasites and all the different waterfowl? You just don't have to worry about that because prevention is going to stop. You're just going to prevent all of those at the same time. So let's go into how do we do it? I need you to think about 2 things to make this all make sense. The first thing is the snail larvae. These are the things coming out of the snail every morning. And they quit about probably late September up here. They overwinter in the snail. And they don't start until about mid-May. So if you want to swim in April, you're going to be good. But they overwinter, And then, of course, the snails that carry it, they only live for a year plus a few months. They lay their eggs in May, the new ones are hatched, and the old ones typically die later, midsummer. But when those things come out every morning, so tomorrow morning, it starts to get light, they're going to come out, 2,000 to 3,000 per infected snail. They're going to go right to the surface. And they hang there their entire life, which is one day. They don't feed. They have no feeding mechanism. They only live for one day. There's only enough energy in that little body that fork-tailed carry to live for one day. So think about pollen. Think about that calm morning when the pollen is just out there from the trees in the spring, and you got to think that way. That's how these things they act. And then when we talk about prevention, I want you to think about how do we prevent mosquitoes from biting us and getting mosquito bites. So 2 things to think about. Okay, so I think this is a helpful comparison. If there's mosquitoes, we could wear clothing that covers our parts where they're going to bite us. That was what we typically do. You could wear a rash guard. And in Michigan, a rash guard, what's a rash guard? But if you go on the coast, either coast, rash guard, people are wearing rash guards for jellyfish stings, and it's very common. But here it's not as common. It's just a tightly fitting swimsuit, I guess, for the little kids. This happens to be my 5-year-old granddaughter. We got new ones this year because they grow every year, and that costs $29.95 for the rash guard. Okay, and it's tight fitting, and that keeps the larvae from penetrating. Now, you got to worry about their hands. Well, your hands are moving around so much that they don't usually get it. What about your face? Typically, the face is above water, so it's really, takes care of most everything, so we don't have to worry about it. So that's just one way. That's one way you can think about, we could wear a rash guard. We like it because you don't have to lather them up with sunscreen. They did a study, there was a study just published last year about the chemicals that are in sunscreen and how quickly they go into your bloodstream. And there's like 7 chemicals that within an hour are found in your bloodstream. And it's like, I really, really want to do, we want to protect their face and things, but there's advantages to that. Mosquitoes, you'd apply a repellent with DEET. There are some products out there. I'm not endorsing any of these because I don't know. We don't use them, but there's Swimmer's Itch Guard. Safe C is for jellyfish protection, stings from jellyfish, which would, if it stops that, it might stop the larvae. I can't endorse any of these. I don't really know, but that's another thing. Here's a big one. Watch the wind. If it's windy, if I were to sit on this lawn in the evening with the wind blowing like this, I'm not worried about mosquitoes. But if it's really calm and it's muggy and I'm out trying to grill some hamburgers, the mosquitoes are going to come in, right? So the wind is a big factor. With these larvae that come up to the surface, wind is a big factor. If it's a calm morning, just glass. Oh, it's beautiful. Look out, it's glass. Well, those larvae are just they're like the pollen. They're there. I would be very careful at that point. They're there. They haven't been blown anywhere. As soon as the wind picks up and starts blowing it, it's either going to blow them out. It's offshore wind. Those snails, they produce them right away in the morning, blow them out, probably good. If it's blowing in lightly, they're going to accumulate in your swim area. But if it's blowing in strong, if the strong onshore wind, it's going to blow them right up on the beach. So we did a study on Elk Lake on the north, not far from here actually, on a windy day, blowing across. We did offshore over here and we did onshore over there. And we showed that in the first 6-8 feet of right where the little 2-year-olds are going to play, 100 times more larvae in that little bit of water than if you go out 8, 10, 12 feet, and there was an onshore wind blowing those things right in there. So that would be something you got to think about, like, oh, okay, that's probably not, have them either get a kiddie pool for the 1-year-olds, or go out a little bit further with mom or dad and plunk them in the water, and you're better off at that point. The wind is really critical. I'm going to put a plug in. I know Sam would like this. If we harden our shores with more seawalls, it blows in, those larvae are just going to stay right there. And you're creating a real situation for swimmers. Because all of this is going to be just loaded with if it's blowing in, it's going to be loaded with parasites, right? Think pollen again. Makes sense. Oh, this is interesting. Once we shifted, as Bob said, once we shifted our thoughts that, boy, let's not trap these mergansers. Mergansers are really tough to catch. We couldn't catch them for several years. We were just talking about this the other night. For several years, we trapped them at night with spotlights. And I wouldn't start working until 11 o'clock at night. And then I'd get in at 3. And then, we had students working in the summer, and it wasn't that much fun. And so I invented a way to catch them during the day. And because nobody else in the world knew how to do that, we could make a lot of money doing that. Let's trap the mergansers. And we did, up until 2018 or 20, when the data started to show that, it's not working. On some lakes, this is just not working. So we explored some other ways. Create a barrier. It's what you do with mosquitoes. Well, let's do a screened in port. What about in the water? We experimented, this is ours, we experimented with these, this is overkill, but these are oil rig, things they use in the ocean for an oil spill. They go down about 16 inches with a chain and so on, they're 50 feet long. That's quite a bit of overkill for little microscopic larvae, but it was what's out there on the market. So we just put these up to see what they would do, and I'll share more of that in a little bit. Plan your day. Mosquitoes. This is a mosquito graph. This is sunrise, noon, sunset to sunrise. You know that. Mosquitoes are really bad in the evening and then into the night. The same is true for these larvae. So we did a study on Glen Lake where we went out at 8 a.m., 12 noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. Same sites. The sites are on the left here. And then we took a water sample, and again, this is because of the new technology. We took a water sample, and we counted how many larvae were in that water sample. And boy, at 8 a.m., and again, the darker the red, the more. At noon, at 4, and at 8. And so you say, well, it's decreasing quite a bit. Yeah, it is. Why? They're getting eaten. They are a food source. They're like mosquitoes. They're dying because they only live for the day. Or they're getting blown up on shore because of a strong wind. And so there's some scientific evidence that the later in the day that you go, the less chance of getting swimmer's itch. We could try to trap or destroy the mosquitoes. They have different things out there. Or we could do the same with the larvae, maybe. So this is a little bit out there, but I'll share it with you real quickly. This is a net. This is all stuff made for pools to get the leaves off the surface of the pool. And think about the larvae, right? They're acting like that. And so that's a net. We just took the net for leaves and we replaced it with a fine mesh net. And we pulled it in the swim area. We took a sample before, we took a sample after, showed how much it decreased by just sweeping the area. This right here, we thought, well, these little fork-tail things are very fragile. What if we were to suck them up, send them through this centripetal, put some force to them and break them apart, and then shoot them back into the water? And we called that the smasher. And then this guy, we thought, well, let's not us do that. Let's let the kids do this. This is an RC boat made for pools to get the leaves off the surface of the pool. Let's put a fine mesh net on there and let's let the kids just in this area, in this, you know, defined area where we're keeping the other ones from floating in. And let's just zoom around with that and see it, you know, take a sample before, take a sample after. When we just did the rake and we called it USS Dragnet, that's the boat. We went from before 878 larvae per 25 liters, so per sample, down to basically nothing. We got rid of all. The smasher, this is the taking it in, pumping it around. The blue is before, the red is after. So those things work. But I'm not a businessman, so I'm not, you know, none of these were produced and taken to market, but if some of you are and you have an interest in doing it, I'm just throwing ideas out there. Then we thought, let's keep simplifying things. How about this? What if this red thing right here, this is a dock, the T-shaped thing is a dock, sure. The red thing is one of those baffles right along the dock. Because who wants to have these yellow baffles out in front of your swim, right? So let's just hide them right along the dock. So if we did that, and by the way, these are snails, those are little fork-tailed larvae, right, representing those. So we put one of these along a dock. Well, we actually did a number of them. We wanted more than just one to do this, so we did a number of these. But you can see the wind was actually from this direction. Do you see all the white foam here getting caught there? And then over here, you don't see it. And so all the larvae, which are at the surface, are going to blow in there and going to get trapped there. So on that day, if you have kids or grandkids, you want to swim on that side of the dock. If the wind is from the other way, you'd swim on the other side of the dock. So we wanted to put some science behind that. We said, all right, if there's no wind, or very little wind, less than 3 miles an hour, we did 3 different sites of this. 165 versus 111, essentially the same. So now let's get a wind, let's do it, get a wind blowing here. And obviously, what we think, our hypothesis is they're all going to stack up here and they're going to get blown out on that side. And sure enough, that's what we found when we took water samples and looked at how many worms were in the water from that simple technique. Then we thought, well, what if there's no wind? And those are the nice days to swim, right? Those beautiful, no wind, let's go swimming. Could we possibly take a baffle and just sweep it? Like just, get rid of all those, just skim the top. So just go like this and get rid of the larvae and create a safer swim area. I gotta tell you, we didn't do this. We didn't get this far. The summer ended and we didn't test this out. But in theory, that should work. But I don't have any data to share with you on that one. If you want to be involved, and I don't know if you're late to Sam, whether you guys do this or not, but if you want to report your swimmer's itch to the University of Alberta, that's who we collaborate with regularly. In fact, in October, we're going to present on swimmer's itch at the Freshwater Summit in Traverse City. And Patrick, who's arguably one of Canada's best scientists, parasitologists, is coming. And he's going to help present at that time. But he has a website that you can just record. It's easy. You go on, you say, hey, we got swimmer's itch, and it will put your dot on the map, and you can look at the maps, and you can look at Elk Lake, and you can see who's got swimmer's itch, who's reported swimmer's itch, and so on and so forth. So that's available. And then I'm going to end with this. I think education is really important. Now, obviously as a teacher, 32 years of teaching high school biology, I really value education. But I think in this case, it really does make sense. If you're educated, you can prevent swimmer's itch. You can swim. You can have your grandkids swim. Ours do on Lime Lake. We don't even talk about swimmer's itch. It's a non-issue. There aren't good years and bad years, or good days and bad days. We don't have that anymore. because we just prevent it. We know what we're doing with the prevention. I put this pamphlet together for Lake Leelanau because I'm the biologist there now. I said, I'll do that, but I want to make that available for any lake association for free. If they want to take it, change their logo and put their logo on it and send it out, it's available just to educate people. And I created this, but if we continue to treat our lakes like swimming pools, and that's not just for this, but that's like hardening the shore, treating it like a swimming pool. Putting chemicals in, it's treating it like a swimming pool. Removing the waterfowl, removing the parasites, decreasing biodiversity, it's treating it like a swimming pool. What we're going to end up with is we're going to end up with a cesspool. In other words, we're going to end up with harmful algal blooms. We're going to end up with all those things that these organisms are doing for us to preserve what we have, protect and preserve. We're going to lose those. And we're going to end up with something that we're going to pass on to the next generations that isn't as good. And so I really encourage you to learn some of this. Stay tuned with what, I'm working on Eurasian water milfoil now, but not much with swimmer's itch, but there's a lot there. I didn't talk to Bob or Sam about this, but I'll take a couple questions probably, but before I do, I'm going to ask the first one. Because I know some of you might be thinking this. Well, what do you do? Right? What do you do? I've alluded to some things, so here's what we do. Here's what my daughter, who's again a lake biologist, we look at the wind. That's important. If you think pollen, you look at the wind. What's the wind doing? On a calm, beautiful morning, we had some guests up a few weeks back, and they had 2 little boys, and we have 2 little granddaughters. They're all playing, and my daughter says, wait, not going in, go to the end of the dock and get in, or wear the rash guard. If it's not windy, it's a big thing. If it's windy, you play the wind. They don't wear the rash guards very often. I'll be honest with you. We don't wear those rash guards. They like to wear them. They'll wear them around the yard because they feel like they're little dolphin trainers. But we don't wear them very often because usually there's wind. We're not far from Lake Michigan. And so the wind is critical. Time of day, we typically will swim in the afternoon because we know the science. We know that there's way more worms in the morning. And so typically they'll swim in the afternoon. And those 2 things, we don't use the cream or any of that. We just do those. We watch the wind, know what's happening, think like pollen, prevent like mosquitoes, and we just go and swim. And we don't worry about it. We don't talk about it. And it's really a good thing. We don't trap any ducks. And we used to do all that. We don't do any of that now. All right, question, go ahead.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One is there a supplement that you can take that makes your body chemistry more like the 40% that don't get swimmer's itch? That's question 1. Question 2 is when you wear a rash guard, what stops the parasites from getting in the water that goes between your skin and the rash guard and going into your skin?
Yeah, so I'm old, so the first question, start with the first question. I know it's only 2, but go ahead. First question was?
Oh, sorry. Is there a supplement you
Yeah,
can
okay,
take to change
got
your
it.
body chemistry?
So it's very difficult to get money from the federal government to study swimmer's itch because it's labeled by the CDC as a nuisance. It's not labeled as a disease. So you can't get money to study something like that. That's a great question. Why is my immune system, well, I do get swimmer's itch, but somebody that doesn't get it, how is their immune system different? I will say this, just because you don't get it, there's a theory out there that it actually goes further into your body. It goes past that. So those of us that get it are maybe better off because it's there, we kill it. So no, we don't know the answer to that. It's a great question. Your second question?
When guard?
Yeah, okay, so the rash guards have to be tight fitting. Not much water gets in there. They have to be tight. You say, well, if we get it this way, they'll grow into it. Don't do that. Get it tight. Get a tight fitting rash guard. The water won't go in, and it won't be a problem. Yeah, good questions though. Yes, sir.
You had pictures of the barrier setup.
Yeah.
Sometimes, any decisions on that or conclusions?
Yeah, it does stop them from blowing. It's again.
It is effective.
It is.
This
Yeah.
is expensive.
It is. If you're going to try to stop oil spills in the ocean. If somebody would invent one just for swimmer's itch where it doesn't need to be nearly that big and expensive, it would be a better deal. I won't ever invent that, but if somebody did, it would be a better deal. Yeah, good question.
So the victim's rubbing,
Yeah, good question. What about toweling off? It's a great question. Some species, and I've changed my tune on this. Some species of the larvae that come out of the snails, this fork tail, are sticky. What do you mean? They cling. Not with their ventral sucker, but their whole body is sticky. Those, if you come out, it's a really hot day, you come out of the water, and of course they're on the surface, right? Come out of the water, you basically coated yourself with those. And then if you don't towel off, you just lay there and they just burrow in as you're laying in the hot sun. So it would be good to towel off. And the reason we didn't have that species up here, and guess what? The new one that we discovered through Canada geese, sticky. That's the most prevalent one on your lake. So I would definitely say, get out of the water, towel off. Good advice.
so we used like that older motor for Lakeshore, and the reason we did it because we got the worst score, I think, from Minnesota, because they understand the lake. And, was that a bad move?
And say it again, you did what?
We put boulders along our lakefront.
Yeah, so the boulders, if it doesn't allow the water to wash up, so like our place on Lime Lake, if it's blowing on shore, it's got enough sand beach where it would the waves would blow up and all the larvae would blow up too. And they would stay in that sand. And so, and if you didn't have that, if the water wasn't allowed to go up on there, then it would bounce back and those larvae would still be alive in the first part of the lake.
So what they did, they staggered the boulders up, it wasn't a sheer wall, by any means.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, just listening to you talk, that I pretty accessible, thinking of doing good.
Yeah, so you probably put them there to prevent the ice jacking and the undercutting. Yeah. Yeah, so it's not ideal, I'll be honest. From a lake health standpoint, you're better off to not have a hardened shoreline, whether it be boulders or blocks or seawall. It's really tough now. The state of Michigan, Eagle, is starting to realize, they have realized now how bad those are for the lake. And it's hard to get a permit to get a seawall. I don't know about boulders, but it is pretty difficult now because they recognize that it's not the healthiest thing for the overall health of the lake, even though I know what you're trying to do to prevent the erosion. So it makes sense to try to do that, but yes, sir.
Do you know if there's any cycle, like our climate has a cycle year by year?
Yep.
Is there a cycle where, for example, in my thoughts and what I've noticed where we live, it seemed like we didn't have much trouble at all in the last year or 2 years, but prior to that, we had, 5 to 10 years ago, different story, almost all kids were getting it.
Yep.
It could be the kids
No.
were older or something.
No, well, there is some of that. Our immune systems will change as we age. And so I think kids are more susceptible. However, there are a couple of different things at play. It's a good question. He's asking about, the cycle of things. The snail populations will go up and then they'll go down. And you say, well, if you only have one 2% of your snails are infected of that species. All of your snails, less than 1%. But if you have half as many snails, you're going to have half as many infected snails. You're going to have half as much swimmers. Okay, so that's true. You've seen that with zebra mussels, maybe. I know we have on our lakes where, boy, the zebra mussel earlier, and then there aren't as many zebra mussels. That's true of snail population too. And then I would also add the waterfowl population. There may have been a family of ducks or geese or whatever that spent more time in your area. Don't feed the waterfowl. I mean, I think most of you know that, but you don't want to attract. They're fun to look at. They're wonderful. They swim by, wonderful. Wave to them, but don't encourage them to spend time in your area because they're just going to, infect the snails. So it's the cycles is a good thought. There are cycles going, and which one had the impact, I'm not certain. We'd have to study that, but that's a good question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned something about 90 seconds. So if you're swimming for more than 90 seconds, they're going to be all over you whether you towel or not. If you get out
Could be.
after 30 seconds.
Oh yeah. That's true. If you went in for 30 seconds, came out and toweled off, you will not get swimmer's edge. Won't be that much fun for your grandkids to do that, but it is something. Yes, sir.
Is Vaseline applied to the skin effective?
I've heard of that. I've probably heard of easily 30 different things that people do. Some of them are really crazy. I've heard of the Vaseline. People that do it, I don't think they get swimmer's itch, but they really don't enjoy life very much during that time. But it might be effective. I think it is effective to preventing them from coming in. Yes, ma'am.
Water temperature, does that affect?
It does only at the start, like in May. So as soon as the temperature gets up to about 60, low 60s, they're going to start kicking out the parasite. And then in the fall, when it gets down to that, they're going to go dormant inside the snail. So water temperature, but during the summer, no. You have a hot, like it's kind of cooler this week, it's not going to help you or hurt you. No, it's a good question. And I don't know, Bob, you're going to stop me when we're on the stop here, right? I'll take more questions, but go ahead.
We have a hot tub, and we wondered if getting in the hot tub, the chlorine helps kill the larva.
It'd be similar to toweling off. The chlorine in the hot tub, if you got right out of the lake, went in the hot tub, any of them that were stuck on but hadn't burrowed in, it'll kill them. And so that would be a way to, instead of toweling off, you could do that. That would work. Yes, ma'am.
So you showed the jar, picture of the jar with swimmer's itch, and I actually bought it.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Swimmer's itch guard, it's called. Mm-hmm.
yes, and it's quite expensive, but I read the ingredients, and it has like zinc oxide, which is one of them.
Okay.
And then, like, for our grandkids, they all wear the sunscreen, but
Right.
even putting zinc oxide with that, it seems like it hasn't been very troublesome. And I'm wondering if that might help a little bit.
Yeah, they claim that it does work. I lost my sense of smell 25 years ago, before COVID. So I don't smell it, but people that use it say it doesn't smell very good. I don't know if that's true or not, but some of them don't like the smell. But it does seem to work to keep the parasites off. Yes, sir.
I've seen this where an adult allows you can't enter the lake because so many people were getting in the lake with suntan lotions on all of that. They were destroyed.
Yeah.
Are we seeing that?
It's a good question. So he said in Japan, they don't even allow you to swim because people are getting in with all these creams and lotions on, and that if you're in the water for more than a few seconds, it's going to wash off into your lake. And so it's having a negative impact on the ecosystem. And has there been any studies done here? Not to my knowledge. But that is a negative towards using some of the stuff on your skin. Our simple solution, we'll buy a rash guard every year. For the 2 granddaughters, it costs $59. And, you know, if it's one of those days where we got to really watch it and they really want to go swimming and they don't want to wait till the wind picks up, then we're going to wear rash guards. And I'm not endorsing any company, or there's a whole bunch of them out there. You just have to Google rash guard as far as that goes. So, yes, ma'am. You, yeah.
Kids, grandkids were here, you know, right around Harbor Days. And one of his daughters asked him, do you have any Dawn soap? And I said, yeah, I do. And that's what she used in the shower.
After.
Yeah.
So Dawn soap in the shower after with a full moon. Or no. Here's what I tell people. It's a good point. Here's what I tell people. If it works for you, do it. As long as it's not having an ecological damage to the lake. If that works, I would say keep doing it. It works. Does it work for everyone? I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever tested it. You know, and it might be something that's plausible and that it should be looked at. But I would say if it works, share it with your neighbors, see if it works for them, and if it's something that catches on, Sam will have it in the next newsletter. Yes, ma'am.
So we're going in after 4 o'clock.
Mhm.
We're going in at the end of the dock. We're toweling off immediately. We're rinsing off with soap and water.
Mhm.
We are still getting it on our feet and ankles.
Ooh.
So I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't either. Because feet and ankles doesn't make sense at all. Other than,
Multiple family members.
yeah.
I am not imagining.
Yeah. I know all of the avian schistosomes, that's a big word, all of the avian parasites that cause swimmer's edge go to the surface. And so why that would happen on the ankles, I don't know the answer. Yeah, I wish I could help you. I don't know, other than maybe if that's the only place, just to, you know, buy some little, you know, I think Sam told me one time, you wear your yoga pants when you go in, you just put the yoga pants on and you wade in and do your stuff in yoga pants.
And socks and sandals.
And socks with sandals or something. And so, and if that works, that's what you should do. But try some different things. And, you know, I think knowing how it all works, how the system works, I think really helps us all prevent it and preserve and protect your lake. So, all right, one more, right, Bob? One more? One more.
And I think Ron will be here for a couple minutes.
If you have other
We're
questions.
gonna have to keep everybody here.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
One more. Did somebody have their hand up? Go ahead.
Once you get it, you have mentioned in this thing, what else do we do?
You know, the worst I ever had it, I was doing a study on Glen Lake back in the day. We walked around the lake, and it was a hot day, so I had tennis shoes and shorts, or swimsuit, jumping over docks, walking the perimeter. Came back, I had 150 on each leg from the knee down. And I was miserable. I think God did that so that I appreciate what this really is. But I was miserable for a week. I put calamine lotion on it, and it helped. I mean, it just caked it. You couldn't see my skin. I caked it. But every time you laid on the couch, just moved a little bit and rubbed one of them, the whole business started. And it was bad for a better part of a week. I didn't take any oral antihistamine, you know, like Benadryl or whatever. I suppose you could. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't give you any advice on what to do with all that. But anything that would knock the histamines down, it supposedly helps with the itching. And calamine lotion, I can speak, you know, did help, but you just feel like scratching those things. Ugh, it's bad. So I appreciate all your attention. You're great. Those are great questions. So thank you.
I want to thank you, Ron, for presenting today. We have a scene
from Elk Lake here. It says, Ron, thanks for sharing with the Elk-Skegemog Lake Association your knowledge of the challenges facing our natural resources. Thank you so much.